Okay, we are back after that rousing episode yesterday. I am feeling so many things right now, and I'm going to work through them and document them and then bring them forward into the conversation. But I just want you to know that for real, sharing what I shared yesterday caused me to go into a bit of freeze mode. It was really scary for me to say what I really wanted to say, which is that I've always wanted to have this conversation, this three-runged conversation. If you haven't caught yesterday's episode, go back and listen to that one and then come back and listen to this one. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Erin. Welcome in. I am a communications professional. That's how I'm going to describe myself today. And I have been watching AI eat my industry basically alive, one bite at a time. And I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, you know this, and I watch, I observe. I am kind of a pattern observer until I figure out what it is that I really want to say. And here's what I see. Most strategists pretending that it's not happening. And they're secretly panicking on the inside. And this is where you actually need to start leaning in and understanding the concept of a moat. M-O-A-T, a moat, especially in this age of AI. So I'm going to explain more about what this is and why actually this transmission series has helped me refine and redefine and feel more valid in my moat. So every week, I don't know what industry you're in, but you probably see this. Every week, another part of what I used to do becomes perceived as free or easy because of AI. AI writes the shitty first draft. AI generates the social posts. I never wrote social posts for people, but this is just for sake of example. AI does all of the research synthesis. And here's the thing that I'm missing in the dialogue is that the reality is I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. Because before AI times, as a communication strategist, the truth is a lot of what we were charging for was frankly time and effort, which is replaceable. But there is this portion of professional creative services that is never going to be replaced by AI. But the only way that you're going to get solid in that and get over the fear that AI is going to replace 80% of what it is that you're doing is by focusing in on that 20%, that specific layer of what you've always done that AI will never touch. So if you're a consultant or a creator or anyone who makes anything with your brain or with your experience or with a combination of experience, intuition, and operations like I do, you really need to understand where that line is. Where is that moat around your castle? We call that, there's a business concept called the barrier to entry. Okay. This is a big, big business concept that a lot of, if you're in venture capital or you're trying to scale a business really quickly and you're trying to understand the competitive landscape, you always want to ask yourself, well, what's the barrier to entry in the world that I am in? And I am saying this because with Story Studio Network, we went through, well, I did this. I went through a pretty significant analysis of how do we reposition this company so that the barrier to entry isn't so low. The barrier to entry to get on YouTube, extremely low. Anyone with a phone can be on YouTube. Anyone with a phone can be on social media. The barrier to entry is microscopic. Anyone can do it. Now, not everyone can do it well. This is where we get into having this moat conversation, right? But for example, like the barrier to entry to own an airline, very, very high. You need to have a lot of things. You need to have a lot of moving pieces in order to launch, own, and run a successful airline. That's why there are really not that many airlines in the world, right? Barrier to entry. This is how I want you to think about your moat if you are a creator and you're using AI, because this is how I'm thinking about it. I'm like, okay, cool. AI can handle 60, 70, 80% of what we used to charge for because that was time for money. And I don't like charging time for money. I actually like charging for the other 20% that I do that nobody else can do. So why don't we just focus on that and let the robots handle the rest and reduce the lift for everybody? AI is already better than most humans at execution level things, at pattern matching, at analyzing existing data, at synthesizing the research, at generating variations on a theme. It is fast. It is relatively cheap. And here's what the other thing I like about AI is it doesn't have an ego. It doesn't have blocks. If you task it with something and say, I'm going to give you 6 weeks to get this project done, it doesn't take 6 weeks. It takes maybe 6 minutes. A human might get to the end of the 6 weeks, and I'm telling you this because this actually happened to me, and have nothing to show for it because they got in their head, because the ego got in the way. And then you're stuck with this really annoying decision about, okay, great, what do I have to do? I have to deal with humans and emotions and all this messy stuff. And part of what I want to talk about going forward with the Freedom Project is how I have made decisions about that energy interaction in my business and how it's reinforcing my moat, how I cut costs and reduced the emotional lag. I'm not saying I replaced it with AI, but man, there was a thought process there. So let's pretend you're a writer. Okay. Let's just pretend for sake, because I think everybody can understand the act of writing. You say the moat is not your ability to write, because we know AI can do that. Your moat, your barrier to entry is this. Let's just say, for example, and you're going to have to run through this yourself, but this is how I think about AI in my business, is my judgment in the face of ambiguity. Clients do not come to me with clear problems. They actually come to me with a vast array of symptoms. A vast array of symptoms. And sometimes, I'm working with a client right now. I'm into month, I think 7 or 8 with them. And only now do I feel like I have documented all of their symptoms and the results of said symptoms, the manifestations of those symptoms, such that I can really say, okay, here's the clear pathway forward. Humans are messy. They don't give you all the information on a platter all at the first meeting. Complex symptoms take time to unpack, and it takes judgment in the face of that ambiguity. AI can optimize the strategy only so far as I'm able to send it an accurate picture of the symptoms. It cannot tell you what the strategy is if you're not solving for the whole problem. It can only recognize patterns once you have given it all of that information, and it is up to your brain to have the judgment to know, okay, this is actually the whole picture as I see it right now. AI has never seen what you see when you sit with a client. And it will never have confidence because it doesn't have an ego. It's never going to come to you and say, actually, everything we did last week in that brainstorming session makes no sense. And based on this new information, we actually need to do this. It's never going to do that. At least not now. So that's your moat. If you're a writer, if you are writing a communication strategy, for example, like I do, you're a graphic designer with creating a website. The other moat you might have, and I certainly have this, and I lean into it now more because I'm confident in it, is what I'm calling your somatic awareness. Remember, somatics, my program, Story and Somatics, is the ineffable level of judgment that your body helps you understand that your mind cannot yet process. It is the truth that your body understands. So I can feel when a client is saying, for example, yes to something, but their nervous system is saying no. I ran the Clarity Sprint workshop back in September. There were 6 or 7 of us on that call for the 2 hours. They had already all gone through the 5-module diagnostic that I had given them ahead of time. came to the call with very focused questions because it was kind of a wrap up my eyeballs on your strategy and on your challenges and on your diagnostic of where you're being unclear in your messaging. And there was one woman on the call, and I remember her saying, well, like, I know I need to be doing this. Oh, I'm just going to do this. And I watched her physically shift her energy. And I said, you don't really want to do that. But if she had gone to AI and said, okay, well, this is my strategy and this is what I want to do, AI was going to be like, cool, here's all the 18 steps to do that. But her body was screaming, no. AI has no body. It has no body yet. I'm just going to keep saying yet today. It can't read the room. It can't use bodily intelligence. It doesn't have that. You need to use that. That's your moat if you're a creative. And the last thing is, and I don't know any other word to use other than to say it has taste or rather you have taste and ethics, where it takes those cues from you. So you are the one who can look at something and say, no, really, this is the nugget that matters the most. And you may not even want to explain why, but you just inherently, instinctively know that. You also talk about ethics. You know when it makes sense to break the rules. And so we have learned, we train AI on processes. We give it instructions. We tell it to run if-then scenarios. You can tell it to do a lot of really complex things. But it's never going to have that human inclination that a good some percentage of the population has to break the rules when it's necessary. AI is trained on best practices. Your intuitive understanding of situational awareness and ethics is knowing when those best practices don't actually apply. So what you need to kind of stop doing is thinking that if AI can do it, then I am worthless. What I would invite you to say is, if AI can do it, let AI do it. Stop spending your time on the first drafts. Stop doing the research synthesis manually. Your value is not in typing. It's the layer above the typing or below, depending on how you want to structure that pyramid. I'm freeing up a huge amount of time. I was able to eliminate an entire, very expensive team member from my team. My profit margins, which we're going to start talking about more, skyrocketed. In fact, they doubled when I started integrating even mildly AI into my workflow. And now I'm looking actively at other ways to do it. I'm still using so much of my juice. Most of my time with clients is spent with them unloading issues, challenges on me and asking me what I think about it. AI is never going to be able to do that. So here's what actually worries me, though, is that AI is not going to ever replace strategists like me. The mediocre strategists are going to scale mediocrity faster. Here's what I'm scared of, though, is that the internet is just getting flooded with stuff that is just empty and advice that has no real discernment. And the risk is that you lose your sense of discernment. So if you're building a creative practice, your commitment needs to be to what is your moat? What is AI inevitably just going to take off of my plate? Get really good at that. And then focus on the discernment part that is, your judgment, your ethics, your somatic ability to read the room, your ability to make decisions in the face of something not being fully clear. That is where you need to start focusing. And that's actually why I'm not afraid of AI at all. So I'd be curious to hear what you think. So in the next video, what I actually want to do is start talking a little bit about the business structure that I've built, how I break down my 3-day work week. Because we talked about time saving, we talked about profit saving. I'm going to start having that conversation. And tomorrow is Friday, so it's a really good day to start looking at that. And I also want to give you a bit of an update on what's going on with the Embodied Visibility Lab, because I'll be honest, I've been a little bit like, what the heck? I thought I was onto something with it, and it's not doing what I thought it was going to do. Folks are on the fence, or they're saying things to me like, I'm going to wait until you run it again. And my answer to that is, I don't know that I'm going to run it again. So it's kind of like shit or get off the pot. Either we're doing this now, or I'm going to keep going and things are going to evolve. And it's either going to become something and probably, be totally different, or it's not. And I want to talk about that fear of standing there and being like, I'm not ready. I'll jump in on the next one. I'll catch the next boat. That seems to be what's happening with it. And I'm like, is it because I am too early with talking about these 3 pillars of finance, communications, and embodiment? Am I too early on this? I don't know. Let's talk through it. And by the way, if you want information about the lab, I'm going to hold enrollment open, like I said, until the middle of November. But if I don't get enough people in it, then the folks who have joined are going to get some awesome one-to-one coaching from me. And we're just not going to run it. We're going to try it again later. So that's me being totally transparent. It's not really going the way that I wanted it to go for a variety of reasons. There's no blame here. I haven't, but that's just how it is. And I really wanted to run something over, the November through January as I'm building out Slow Freedom Project to bring people into this new mentality. So maybe I just need to change the way that I'm talking about it. I'm not quite sure yet. Anyway, thanks so much for listening to today's transmission. It is day 23. We have 1 week left to go. Thanks for listening. I'll be back tomorrow.